I thank you for being here today to talk with us about such an important issue. You've clearly been a leading Republican voice on climate change. As a senator, as you mentioned, you introduced legislation for cap and trade, and as a Republican presidential candidate, you've been one of only two candidates willing to endorse cap and trade as a mechanism to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. From your conservative standpoint, can you explain to us why the free market alone isn't enough to combat climate change, and why legislation for economy-wide emission reductions is a necessary part of that equation?
Thank you. I think we need a mechanism so that the free enterprise system can work. In other words, a cap and trade is just setting up a system which is based on people buying and selling and people making profits and losses, etc., as opposed to the so-called carbon tax. Now, I know you've had people come to you, in fact, some of the most respected people we know, including Tom Friedman, have said that won't work, the cap and trade, although it did work with acid rain. And I've got to give you some straight talk. It's had a lot of problems in Europe. So the Europeans have set up cap and trade with some pretty poor bases for the beginning. They gave out too many credits, and I've been watching it, and it's been moving forward, but it had a very bad or stumbling beginning. A carbon tax, you always want to be careful when you hear a new phrase or a new word or a set of words, because you ought to really find out what it means. Carbon tax means gas tax increase. I think we're paying enough to get in gas taxes. And what their theory is, you would take that carbon tax and you would devote it to technology, et cetera, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I think it would be a regressive tax. I know in Washington, D.C., the richest people live closest to work and the poorest people live furthest from work. I think it would affect low-income Americans in a much more impactful fashion than it would be wealthy Americans. So I guess I'm saying to you is that even though the government sets up the system, the New York Stock Exchange, the government oversights the stock exchange, but it's basically a free enterprise kind of a system, obviously. Well, cap and trade, in my view, would be a capitalistic, profit-oriented, motivated system, and that over time, I think it would have a beneficial effect. So there is a role for government, but this cap and trade would be based primarily on profit and loss. Thank you.